Please, Luca.
Audio. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Professor Carli, for the introduction. I'm really pleased to be part of this webinar, even just for introducing these distinguished academicians who are joining us, who are joining Associazione Guido Carli for today's discussion and debate on these topics which are so relevant in our contemporary world, in our globalized world. And we all know the huge contribution of China to the current trends in globalization, from the various different industries to finance to any other field in human activity who currently witnesses a protagonism by the People's Republic of China and its partnerships with Europe, with the United States, even in hard times for international relations, but the underlying assets of partnerships still remain and are still relevant to economic trends worldwide. So I'm going to introduce the very renowned people who are joining us. Professor Wang from the Center for International Political Economy at the Peking University. We all know this very renowned academic center, strongly oriented to research and with an international outreach. It was established as one of the most relevant, worldwide famous and high-achieving institutions in the People's Republic of China. And it has always been, even in different eras of human history, of Chinese history, the core of the intellectual elite throughout the country's recent history. I'm going also to introduce you Professor YONG from the Center for China and Globalization, CCG, which I quote from the website, but I also share this relevant information on such an outstanding center. Is a leading Chinese non-government think tank based in Beijing, and it's dedicated to the study of Chinese public policy and globalization. So it is endowed with a strong research team, with various various research fields and different orientations to investigating contemporary issues from a very wide perspective, who is widely appreciated both in China and outside it, even in Europe, as we also know the quality of this research center based in China, but with a really global outreach. Let me spend a very few words on the issue which are going to discussing today, namely the history of, and of course the present of the current trends in not only in globalization but in Sino-Italian relationships. As Professor He was hinting during the preparatory phase of this meeting, Marco Polo is probably the first name who comes to mind when thinking of the Sino-Italian relationships throughout history. And probably that emerging strand of trade between East and West, between Italy, Venice in particular, as Marco Polo was Venetian, and the Far East and China in particular, was really probably at the base, the core of what was going to develop in Italian municipalities, Italian towns who were expanding themselves and joining diverse alliances, both in military terms, but also, and this was actually a novelty at that point in history, also in mercantile terms, to exchange goods and also knowledge. Knowledge is central in Sino-Italian relations, as we all know, the contribution from Father Matteo Ricci of Macerata between the end of the 16th and the beginning of the 17th century, he was a missionary who went to China to of course, to spread the gospel, but also contributed deeply to the mutual understanding between European-based Italian cultures and Chinese one. For instance, he promoted the translation of the Bible into Chinese characters, and this was a really outstanding achievement who has contributed greatly to one of the most literate countries in the world as China is today. And last but not least, we have witnessed a really growing trends of exchange, of mercantile exchange, but also knowledge exchange. Our universities are central in such a flow of knowledge. But it's something which is really contributing to the development from a worldwide standpoint, regardless of what happens day to day between diplomacies and between other kind of institutional relationships, mutual institutional relationships between our countries, but also the East and the West in general. Let me quote by concluding the first line from a very famous poem who is dedicated to the most famous, probably, Chinese emperor, who was Kublai Khan, also the host of Marco Polo when he came to China back at the end of the 13th century, beginning of the 14th. So the Samuel Taylor Coleridge's poem states that Kublai Khan did in Xanadu, the capital of that time, Empire of China, a stately pleasure-dome decree. The poem is really varied. It does not focus on a single topic, but it gives us the idea that China was at that time, and it has always been, a sort of place of magic, a place of wonders, both to foreign explorers, and foreign diplomats, foreign merchants, but also, yes, for its own people, the source of something who was going to develop from yes, a little basis, mainly just a little nudge from central authority, but was able to spread wealth and happiness and other beautiful things into the country. So the poem does not have a central idea, but it represents well what was the meaning of China and what is still today. China is the center of the growing trends of globalization. So the stately pleasure-dome decree, which was quoted by Coleridge at present day, nowadays probably the Chinese contribution to expanding the frontiers of human economy, of world economy, by connecting the East, which is Chinese, to the West, which has not only been broadened its borders up to China, but has also, especially in the most recent years, has also received inflows from China, both in terms of capital, in terms, of course, of knowledge, in terms of other exchanges who are making our worlds, both the Eastern and the Western one, richer than they have ever been. So I am deeply thankful to Professor He and Professor Wang for joining us today, from offering their very distinguished and authoritative perspectives on this. We shall move, of course, from recent history, from the old and the new Silk Roads, up to what is probably going to happen in the future, what are the future prospects. But of course, in doing this, I leave the room to Professor Carli, who will administer the questions and chair the discussion in order to give you words and the possibility and the availability to explain what are the current trends and what and how the future looks like. So we deeply trust your authoritative opinion, your view on both the past and the future. So I'm really glad to allow Professor Carli to chair the discussion and submit you the questions which are going to guide the discussion of today's webinar. Thank you again for your participation, and I have, of course, enjoyed a very pleasure-dome webinar, a pleasure-dome discussion who will be very fruitful for any one of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bellardini, for your introduction and the presentation of our distinguished guests. The first question that I have does relate to the relationships between Italy and China. As Mr. Bellardini pointed out, these relationships date back in the year, because Marco Polo established strong relationships many centuries ago. Now the question is, China is growing tremendously over the year, whereas the Italian economy doesn't show this strength in the recent over the last 15 years. So how are these economic and trade relationships between China and Italy developing over the year? Do we have any opportunity that we might grab and develop for improving as Italians, our economic performances? Where are the opportunities? Related to this question is the global situation, because we see that there are kind of tensions between China and the US. So how these possible tensions might affect the world trade as a whole. And the last point is the coronavirus pandemic, the coronavirus crisis. Is this crisis affecting, and how is this crisis affecting our economic, trade, and political relationship? I would give floor to Mr. Wang and ask Mr. Wang his view on these topics.
Mr. Wang.
If Mr. Wang has problem, probably we can start with Mr. YONG.
Well, thank you, Professor Carli. Thank you, Professor Bellardini. It's my great pleasure to be invited to the webinar and exchange with you with our Italian friends for the issues of our common concern. Italy is a great country, and the Italian people are great people. And yesterday I had Italian spaghetti for dinner because I like Italian food very much. So it's a great pleasure for me to join you to discuss how we can grow our economic cooperation between our two countries. And we can also, oh, sorry, is Professor Wang Yong going to talk? Let me talk, okay? I think China and Italy has been maintaining good trade and economic relations for dozens of years. And Italy is a great country offering very good products, including wines and top brands of luxury goods, and also cars, chemicals, engineering goods. Last year, 2019, the bilateral trade between our two countries hit $50 billion. It's good, but it's still not enough. Because we see that what is trade volume between China and Germany is 200 billion. And the China-Italian trade volume is only 1/4 of China-German trade volume. But in the size of economy, Italy is more than half of Germany. So there's a plenty of room that we should increase our trade volume. And China's economy is growing, although both of us suffered from the hit of COVID-19, especially for the first half of this year. And China's economy also suffered a decline for the first quarter. The GDP declined by 6.8% compared with a year ago. But in Q2, we had a rebound with a positive growth of 3.2%. So for the whole year, we were going to have 1 or 2% growth, which is quite I think there's quite normal in the world, because the whole world is suffering from the Great Depression caused by the COVID-19. So looking ahead, China will offer larger and larger market for the Italian economy. And I would like to suggest that apart from a cooperation or contact between our two governments, the business and industry sectors of our two countries should increase contacts. And we can match industry by industry, match different companies for any trade goods opportunities or for any chances, so as to increase our trade opportunities. And one more thing is, I found in the questionnaire that is because China and the US now have a very serious tension, not only in trade, but also in all the political aspects. Would that be difficult for China-European relations? I don't think that China and the European and the China-Italian relations should be affected by any tensions between China and the United States. We don't ask Europe to take sides. So you should take side with them. We don't ask for that. We don't worry that you will take side with the United States, because I think Italy will decide the relations and the trade with China based on the interests of Italy, not on the other countries. And now with China and the US reached phase 1 agreement for trade, which I found in the questionnaire, that will that affect Europe or Italy? Because in the agreement, we promised to increase purchase of US goods and services up to $200 billion over 2 years. So would that affect trade with Europe, with Italy? I say no, because in the agreement, there's a clear definition that we honor the WTO basic principle of non-discrimination. In other words, China increase of US products imports will not be at the cost of other suppliers. So that means imports from Europe, from Italy will also grow. We just take the example of the past 2 months, July and August. For the 2 months, because the first half quarter data is not normal because it's affected so serious by COVID-19. So for the past 2 months, China's imports from the United States increased by 5.2%, excuse me, in renminbi over a year ago. But China's imports during the same 2 months, China's imports from European Union also increased by 3.5% over a year ago, and that imports from Italy also grew by 4.5% over a year ago. So I don't think we should have any worry that China's agreement with the United States will affect Europe or affect Italy. And also in the agreement, we promised to open market, provide more market access for services. That applies to Europe as well. So Europe and Italy can also benefit from this. I think our two countries should keep in close contact and discuss how to increase trade and investment and the cooperation in various fronts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. YONG. Now I give floor to Mr. Wang, if the connection is fine.
Yes, I hope the connection is good.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a great honor to attend this meaningful and important dialogue. Yeah, I'm traveling in the southern part of China, Shenzhen. Right, it's 2 days ago when I took a flight from Beijing and here, I saw that all the seats of the passengers was taken, which is some kind of symbol of a recovery of the Chinese economy, through the influence of COVID-19. By the way, I hope all the friends here are staying healthy after this moment. Yeah, I like this two important questions. Right? Okay, first of all, I would like to argue, China value greatly the economic partnership with Italy, with European countries, very much. The Chinese people has a very positive, warm, impressions of Italy. It is its culture, civilizations, right, and the modern, the art and cuisine. I cannot mention to that. Football, right, cars, all these things, right. So that is that means the Italy and the companies have a great potential in China. So I think with China is still a developing country, right? Even China has become the second largest economy after that of the United States. Right? China is still a developing country. That means that China will continue the course of learning, from the countries like the advanced economy such as Italy, and it become a larger an export market to the European economies. Second point, you mentioned about the trend of the economic globalization. But I have very worry about its future, because we have seen very negative development of the economic globalizations. First of all, in the last several years, right, it's the trade war, the tariff war between the US and China, between the United States and many other countries, including the European countries. Right now, they have been escalated to all the other friends in the technology, the high tech, the front, right, the financial, the currency front. All these things, right, have been made more worse by the intervention of the United States, right, in the China's internal affairs, such as Xinjiang, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, right? So that is it has been very clear, right? The relationship between the United States and China, has changed, very different from the last 4 decades. Right now, we have seen that is the so-called strategic competition or strategic rivalry between the US and China has driven the relationship. Very unfortunately, but in the matter of factors, United States has a lot of common interests, and both sides have benefited from this great and important relationship, especially economic relationship. Mr. He, they mentioned the numbers and increasing the import on the Chinese side from the US. Okay, that is kind of symbol. And on these things, right, China would like to be committed to the phase 1 trade agreement with the United States. But very unfortunately, why the US-China has come to this state. A very important argument is that it being plagued by the increasingly complicated domestic politics, especially the election politics in the United States. You know, I attended the U.S.-China relations forum in the Switzerland last September, when retired military general of the United States said it very frankly. U.S. the major problem is not China; it's the changes of the demography. And especially the widening the wealth gap between the rich and the poor, and many others, right? But unfortunately, China has become some kind of scapegoat in the U.S. politics, very unfortunately, right? So that I hope after elections, the relationship can have a chance of resetting to come back to the normal relationship. I strongly believe, both sides, U.S., China, can work together for the practical and very important relationship. Both sides can work and cooperate on a lot of matters. The last point, I'd like to mention that I come back to China-Italy relationship. Okay, I have a friend and a student who is Italian. His name is Gianluca Luis, who is now online in the meeting room now. He studied at the Peking University for 2 years and become an Italian diplomat stationed in the southwest China. Now has joined the Chinese business to promote Italian food in China, Chinese food in Europe, in America. Okay, that is kind of symbolic. The young generation, can do better, can have great opportunities to bring the two countries together, right? So both sides have a strong, solid, base for develop, workable, mutual, beneficial relationship between each other. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wang, and thank you very much, Mr. He, for your very precise answer to my question. I would give floor to Luca Bellardini for introducing our Italian guest, Mr. Lamberto Dini, and giving floor to Mr. Lamberto Dini.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Professor Carli. Well, Professor Dini, who was the Italian Prime Minister between 95 and 96, does not need, of course, any presentation, as many people know him, even in China, even in countries where his diplomatic action, his outreach went very, very so far. So he started from the International Monetary Fund. He went up to the highest grade of Director General of the Bank of Italy. Then he was Minister for the Treasury and became President of the Italian Council of Ministers, so Prime Minister of the Republic of Italy back in 1995. He had the opportunity to serve our country at a time in which China was in charge President Jiang Zemin. So I would, of course, thank Professor Dini and former President Dini for joining us in this discussion, and ask him maybe to start his speech by recalling, but it's just a suggestion, of course, just an idea to start his speech by recalling what were his relationships with his mutual relations with Chinese counterparts, maybe with President Jiang Zemin, but also other high-rank Chinese Chinese government people who worked so much and so effectively in boosting the mutual interchange, both in trade flows, both in either in capital flows during the 90s, which were, of course, the times in which the Sino-Italian relationships, but also the relations between the People's Republic of China and the Western world as a whole grew so much, leading to what we all remember in December 2001, China joined the World Trade Organization. So I would ask President Dini to maybe recall this experience in Sino-Italian relations at his time in charge of the main executive body of Italian government, but also to analyze from his wide academic and even central banking background what were the path, what was the path followed in order to make China join the World Trade Organization and become a protagonist, the main character of world trade as it is still nowadays. Thank you, Professor Dini, President Dini, for joining us again, and I leave you very gladly and and I'm really honored to host you as the speaker today. Thank you, and have a pleasant discussion.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your introduction. And let me say, picking up from the question you put to me, that during the years I was not only Prime Minister, but mainly Foreign Affairs Minister, I developed personally very good relations with China, where I have always been welcome. And I have been given the opportunity to speak in front of the Academy of Science to the School of Communist Party in China, talking about Europe, about the Euro, and so on. And also during those years, since then, the trade and economic relations between our two countries, Italy and China, has developed in a favorable way. And I'm also very glad to have heard from our distinguished Chinese guest the good sentiments and good feelings that have existed through the years and centuries between our two countries. Now, this said, I would come to the questions that have been the subject of this discussion. First, it has been said rightly that the trade relations between our two countries have been growing over the years. And it is to be expected that Italy, vis-à-vis China, will continue to have a trade deficit, which China is by far the largest, has the largest manufacturing sector of the world, and China is very competitive in terms of price quality on many products. But a trade deficit is not a problem in itself. We don't look at the bilateral relations with each country. One must have a trade balance. No, but what is important is the tendency, the growth of relations between the two countries, trade and investment. Now, I cannot perceive any change after the coronavirus. This is one of the questions that has been put. Maybe there has been, in the first part of this year, lower sales in Italy, and thus also lower imports from China. But this is certainly a very temporary phenomenon, as coronavirus will tend to disappear gradually from the world. Consumption will increase, growth will increase, and trade also will develop favorably. Now, I think there is no technological frontier. The run for technological supremacy will continue unabated, especially between the US and China. And in which sector Italy and China could invest more? Certainly in the high sectors. companies, we should get better access for Italy's company to Chinese market and have a better level playing field between our two countries. But the growth of relations between our two countries, especially in this technological sector, is linked, cannot be developed bilaterally, totally, between Italy and China because of international constraints. What is necessary, and I think that this will happen, is a major breakthrough through a treaty, a broad overall agreement on trade, investment, and relations between the European Union and China's government. That's what is needed if we want really the relations between also our two countries develop in all this field. Italy cannot act on its own, as I said, because of also international constraints. I do think that this is coming, and it's likely to occur in the near future. As I said, setting out areas of reciprocal interest for China and Europe, and therefore also Italy, and for Europe and China. Chinese technological products and investment in Europe, and the European Union access to companies and markets, better access to Chinese markets by our companies in China. I think that such an overall agreement, between the strategic cooperation between the two entities, Italy can become, through that, really can benefit greatly. This is what I believe it is necessary. Now, how has, in the recent years, the economic equilibrium changed? It has changed greatly because the trade and economic dispute, I would say war, between China and the United States really is affecting the globalization system. Global economic order has witnessed, as you said, a huge disruption over the year, mainly because of this trade dispute. I would say war between the United States and China, initiated and intensified by President Trump. I will not say that the United States did not have any valid claims, that is to say, better US access to Chinese markets, companies, etc. But this dispute, not likely to be resolved, is leading gradually to a breakthrough of globalization, the way we have known during the last 10 and more years. An example, supply chains are being disrupted, and is not going to have technological projects incorporating components coming from 3, 4, or more countries. This is not going to continue. Therefore, certainly, a new dualistic system is emerging between globalization and protectionism. This will lead to a world of 2 or 3 areas of globalization. The United States with its area of interest, China with Russia and Asian countries, and Europe with links with both the United States and China. I think this development, which I see it inevitable, will affect and will reduce competition, and probably will result in higher prices for all products for consumers. Now, let me say once again that a breakthrough in relations between China and Italy is linked to a broad agreement that I think is coming at the government's level between the European Union and the Chinese government itself, covering overall relations. In that, I think that will give strength to Europe, also vis-à-vis the United States, to have growing, stronger relations with China, because Europe can only benefit from stronger relations with China. Of course, the expectation is that China will reciprocate with a level playing field, easier access to its markets and to its companies by the European entities and Italian entities. That is my overall view of the situation and the relation between our countries today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Dini, for this speech, who does cover many aspects, many important aspects, and now it's even a little difficult to me to pick the stimuli that you gave to the audience, because there were many important points. Let me start with the technological innovation and investment, which is one of the points that President Dini raised in his speech. We are all very curious to know the Chinese perspective on this crucial issue: technological innovation and investment. So, first of all, we would like to understand where is the technological frontier, what are the sectors that are more promising in a global perspective, and then what are the sectors that are promising for an interchange between China and Italy, who must be mutually beneficial for both countries. So what are the sectors that we should look at together as Italy in the European Union, as President Dini said? And in the next question, I will talk about the importance of global cooperation. That is one of the points that Mr. Lamberto Dini pointed out in his speech. But I would really focus on technological innovation and investment for understanding what are the sectors, what are the investments that we should try to develop together, and the sectors we should point out for doing something will be mutually beneficial for both countries. Last question: what are, of course, the opportunities, and this is what I'm saying, but what are the obstacles? What are the risks? What are the problems that we might face and that we have to overcome? Mr. He, the floor is yours. Hello? Yeah. I'm not hearing you. Mr. YONG?
Yeah.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Please, go on.
Well, thank you. This certainly is a very interesting question. I think before that, I would like to respond to President Dini a few remarks. I think the trade between China and Italy is not in balance. So that's a real problem. And we also willing to cut down. I think important thing is, yes, I quite agree with President DINI. The important thing that the whole arrangement should not only be done between Italy and China, but should be done between Europe and China. We are working for the bilateral investment treaty, BIT, between China and Europe, and hope to hit a basic agreement by the end of this year. If this is formalized, it will provide a very strong base for a smooth growth of trade and investment between China and Europe, including China and Italy. And first of all, this BIT should stipulate clearly the level playing field. That means all the companies from both China and Europe, from China and Italy should compete on an equal basis. There should be no distortion of trade. And also we should have the open market access opening to different players. And also I think there's, apart from that, we also encourage imports from European countries, from Italy. We highly recommend Italian companies participate in the China International Import Fair, November this year in Shanghai. And for the previous two fairs, we had tremendous trade volumes from different countries, and Italian companies are certainly encouraged to do that. And also, I just like to mention one point, among others. And we think among the European countries, we have trade surplus with the most countries, but China-German trade is mostly imbalanced. And sometimes we had a very slight surplus, and for other years, Germany has a slight surplus. So that means maybe there's also the competition among the European Union member countries, because there might be competition between Italy companies and the German companies for China markets. I think this should be handled within European Union. This is also an important point. And regarding to the technology advancement, yes, and a recent report by WTO also shows that world trade, although suffered seriously by the virus, it will also change by the advancement of new technologies and the fourth industrial revolution, and symbolized by a few points among others. First, digitalization, not only in manufacturing, but also in trade. And goods with the strong backing of digitalization will have a higher productivity with a higher competitive edge. And also industrial robots, which can upgrade and reduce the cost and also upgrade the product quality and the technology contents. And there will also be broad areas for increasing trade investments in semiconductor, in biotechnology, pharmaceuticals, and smart engineering, new energy, quite to mention but a few. I think we can also look forward for new chances and new expansion in those areas. And in those aspects, both China and Italy should cooperate not only in the technological development, but also should be encouraged in the mutual investment. And now Italy in China, Italian investment in China is not very large, because we saw that the figure for the year 2018, the direct investment from Italian companies in China was only $230 million, as compared with $3.7 billion from Germany. While China's investment in Italy is not very huge, large as well. For the year 2018, China's direct investment in Italy was only 300 million, but China's investment in Germany is 2.7 billion, and in UK, 1 billion. So there's a large room for increased mutual investments. And I think we should increase more opportunities for business sectors, for business companies to explore specific chances regarding for industries, for markets, for opportunities. And that will be a good chance to advance our trade and investment in those areas. And also, I think that we cannot develop trade with a background of new technology alone, because we need a favorable international environment. Now the international environment is not very good, should be frankly very bad. Now the globalization is being affected not only by the virus, but also by the different trade policies and the conflicts of interest among nations. And especially the United States now takes the policy on American first. That means the interests of other countries second. That will create a lot of chaos in the multilateral trade mechanism. And it is very interesting that people are talking about the segmentation of global supply chains. They might fall into different areas. That means the United States and North America as a major area, and then Europe as another area, and Asia as another area. So different areas. There may be, although they are interlinked, there might be differences among the different three. I should say that actually this pattern is already there. Europe has intra-area trade accounting for 2/3 of all the European foreign trade. I don't know what is the percentage in Italy, but Europe as a whole is that percentage. And East Asia has countries have more than 50% of their total world trade among this own region. And North America is less. Only 40% of total world trade happened within North America. And so the three major aspects. In China, the total geo-trade pattern worldwide is Asia accounts for 50% of total China trade, and Europe accounts for nearly 20%. And so Asia and Europe combined account for over 70% or nearly 3/4 of China's total world trade. So if we do good job, we do good job with RCEP in Asia and the BIT with Europe, that will lay a good foundation for our work, for our trade in the future. And also we have to handle smartly the trade tensions with the United States. But anyway, even if we put it that way, those three continents are interlinked, because the advance of technology and the fourth industrial revolution will enhance greatly the scale of the economy. And the scale of the economy needs a world market. We need allocation of resources and the markets worldwide. So that will not replace globalization. Globalization, although met with difficulties for the current time, will continue. So all of us, both China, Italy, and China, Europe, should work in that direction. In this direction, we should also uphold multilateral trade mechanism represented or centered by WTO and its rulemaking system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. He. I think that we all agree about the importance of the international framework, the international environment, as you called it. This is very important, and the fact that it's not very favorable at the moment shall not prevent us to do something for improving and making it better in the future. Mr. Wang.
Hello. Thank you, Mr. Carli. First point, I'd like to say President DINI has made a very important remark about relationship. Especially, he recalled its relationship with the Chinese leader and its role in the China's WTO accession. That's very important. As the people in China remember that. I remember the friendly, the relationship between the two countries. Yeah, because now we're talking about the difficulties in the economic globalizations, right? I believe if we can have a friendly relationship as well as political trust, that will very helpful the economic cooperation. About the issue of a trade imbalance between the two countries, I'm cautiously optimistic. Why? First of all, the China's the expert search, mainly the stories of economic globalizations, the stories of the global supply chain. The Apple product, iPhone, is a typical example of this. Right? If we calculate the real value collected by the Chinese workers and Chinese factories, you might say the number is quite limited. The lion's shares of the profits out of the iPhone, goes to the Apple, the corporation itself, and the main supplies of the key parts and components from the Japan, Germany, and Korea. China only collected about 5 to 6% of the value added. Okay, that's the reality of globalizations. That is something all of us have to cope with. The number two, China is losing its competitive advantage in low labor cost product. I'm in Shenzhen now. We have seen the labor intensive, the productions has been moved out of from the city from China to the other countries, like Vietnam, like Malaysia, and India. On the other hand, China, reached its living standard, the income level of the average people. That means China will buy more from the countries like Italy, and China will, is giving up the lower labor cost products. So I think the future in the next 2 or 3 years, will improved. About your question, Mr. Carli, about innovation and potential for the two countries to work together. I think now we have a bright future for the two countries, talented engineering, the scientists to work together, right? So now in China now, we have seen the very important development of combination of traditional manufacturing technologies with the new generation technology, summarized as intelligence manufacturings, or the Industrial Revolution 4.0 version. Right. That is very important. We have seen is a very important influence in fighting the pandemic. The impact to the economy. Now we are at the same, ground, right? So I think the universities and research institutes, engineering companies of Italy have some advantages in that regard, right? Chinese company and the Italian company should work hand in hand in this regard to develop the third-party markets in addition to the presence and the strengths in China and Italy's markets. So that is we can be put into the categories of third-party or the One Belt or the Belt Road Initiative corporations. Yeah, so I think we should work together. We need more dialogue with the industries and the companies to know each other and make friends with each other. And by this, by cementing the close relationship, and both sides can find and search very important potential to be tapped. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wang. President DINI, I don't know whether you have any consideration after these two interventions of our Chinese friends.
I do think that I agree very much with the wise considerations that have been developed just now by Mr. YONG and now by Mr. Wang. I think we ought to work in that direction, absolutely. But the only remark that I want to make, they didn't say anything whatsoever what China is willing to do to facilitate the work, the entrance and the work of European or Italian companies in Chinese companies and in the Chinese market. Now, it is true that China is now basically a market economy, is part of the World Trade Organization. The organizational structure of its economy is still very much linked to the government. And it is in that area, I believe, that Europe should expect from China, some move to facilitate Italian and European companies entering and working in China to develop in a favorable way, in a more balanced way, the growing relations between the two countries. But I appreciate very much the wise remarks that have been made by our distinguished Chinese guests. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President DINI. I would like to give floor to Mr. He and Mr. Wang for replying to the question of President DINI before making the last question and then opening the Q&A. Mr.
Yes, sorry.
Yes, please go on.
Well, thank you, President DINI. I think we had regular dialogues with China-European Union Chamber of Commerce in Beijing. And we have heard lots of their concerns and remarks and also their complaints. And we're trying to work on that. But since the outbreak of the virus, we have not been doing that for almost a year. So we'll continue to step up that efforts. I think that Chinese government, I cannot say that for the Chinese government, but I should say that we are certainly open for all the complaints and suggestions and requirements from European countries and European business community. Yes, we should do a good job that fair competition in China markets by all companies. We should notice that the latest China's foreign investment law taking effect on January the 1st this year has a very distinguished characteristics, which is the focus of encouraging foreign investment is no longer preferential tariffs or tax rebates, but fair treatment, equal treatment to all the companies in China, be it SOEs, private or foreign. That means all the foreign companies, when doing business in China, should be awarded the same fiscal and monetary incentives equal to Chinese SOEs or Chinese private companies. So they are equal. If we can do that, then the European companies will solve a lot of problems. And we are open to all your complaints and demands. I think we can keep dialogue and find out problems and then salute the problems just practically, one by one, not in general. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wang.
Thank you, Mr. Carli. Yes, I understand the concerns of the President DINI and some other Italian friends about the market access. Yes, and then also, that is also some internal pressures on the Chinese side. And is calling for the more reform and opening up. But in the recent years, especially with the tariff war between the U.S. and China, and the government, and the government and the leader take the external pressure as as some of the driving forces for reform and opening up. Some people even compare it to to the second chance of joining the WTO. We have seen improvement of China's business environment and the shorter list, the foreign investment. Okay, that is a very important the things. I call the Italian friends to pay attention to this progress, along the reform and opening up, right? So, for example, in the sectors of the trade service, right? We have seen, that is the abolition the investment of the shares, or to reduce the shares of investment by the foreign companies in a lot of sectors, right? In automobile, pharmaceutical, chemistries, as well as the financial, the sectors, right? So I think that is the latest development. The Italian friends should pay attention to it, watch it very closely, and have the consultant. Because China and Italy has become a strategic partner of the Belt Road Initiative Corporation. Right, Italy must be on the priority list of China's economic partner. Right, please take advantage of this great opportunity, right, to find the chance in the Chinese markets. Okay, that is my reactions to the President DINI's question and concern. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wang. Thank you very much, Mr. Wang, and thank you very much, President DINI, for posing this very important question. Now, I would come back to the general framework because the importance of the international environment and the importance of international cooperation have been recalled during our conversation. So there is no doubt the global economic order has witnessed huge disruptions over the last years. There is a renewed dualism between globalization and protectionism, and the COVID-19 emergency further exacerbated the situation. Now, what do you think the new global economic equilibrium will be after this crisis? And I would add also, what do you expect from after the US elections, whoever will win? Mr. He, the floor is yours.
Thank you. That's a very good question, but very, very big question. We need to discuss it for maybe for hours. That's really the common challenge facing all nations in the world today. I think many people mentioned about COVID-19's influence on world economy and the global supply chain. This is, of course, absolutely correct. On the other hand, we should not exaggerate the implications of COVID-19 on world economy and the world supply chain, because that is only temporary. This is not a social problem. It's not an economic issue. It's a natural public health disaster. Should be handled by in some other ways. And when the COVID-19 is basically under control, the important thing is for all the countries to work together to improve the global governance. And one thing we should bear in mind is globalization is disrupted not only by COVID-19, but also by unilateralism, by protectionism, which is very bad for global economy. And this trend will continue, and this threat will continue. We should pay enough attention to that. On the other hand, globalization will continue. It will not stop, although they will temporarily suffer a setback. According to the latest data by Untitled, the cross-border investment in the world for this year, 2020, will fall probably by 40% on basis of 2019. In 2019, the cross-border direct investment worldwide was $1.5 trillion. For this year, it will be less than $1 trillion. But hopefully it will pick up next year and 2022 and beyond. And globalization will continue. So in this aspect, we should work together. That is to uphold multilateralism. The global governance, the key is still multilateralism. And the economic area is global multilateral trade mechanism with the WTO at the center. So what should we hit the new balance? I think first, the new economic balance, the new economic order should reflect the changes of technological advances and all economic new factors, including the new drive engines, the new technology, artificial intelligence, big data, and the smart engineering. And on this basis, the current multilateral trade mechanism or WTO rule system need to be upgraded. So WTO reform is necessary. They should reflect the changes of the world to keep abreast with the changes of the world over the past 20 years and in the future. Then, still, we don't say that we should change WTO. We should only upgrade and reinforce that. On the basis of multilateral trade mechanism, the new world economy should be rest on multi-pillars. That means there might be few centers, North America, Europe, and Asia. So the world economy supported by multi-pillars will be more balanced. And also, not only we should do a good job to work well with cooperation among the different pillars, but also we should pay enough attention to the United Nations 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, because this goal has been under serious threat after the outbreak of the COVID-19, because there will be new hunger, new poverty in Africa and in many other countries. We should work together to support those parts of the world, to support those parts of the people, so as to hit the new balance of the world economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. He. Mr. Wang. Mr. Wang? Probably we have some problems in the connection. So as soon as Mr. Wang will be back with us, he will give us his view on this very important topic. Now I would ask Luca Bellardini to open the Q&A time because we have some questions for our audience. So, Luca, please.
Thank you, Professor, and thank you, of course, to our distinguished speakers for the relevant topics they have addressed up to now and that, and of course, they are going to address in this Q&A session. Questions today are submitted by Giovani Globali, Global Young People, as translated in English, which is an association between mainly Italian but also international and foreigner youth, which is oriented to 5 pillars, five main goals, which I'm going to quote from their website. It's critical thinking, a multi-perspective attitude, communicability, anti-fragility, I suppose, in the sense popularized by Nassim Nicholas Taleb's outstanding work, and farsightedness. So I thank them for being with us today, Lorenzo Di Nardo and Dr. Lo Monaco, who have submitted the questions that I'm going to report to our distinguished guests, asking them for a reply. So the first question is about the global recession yielded by COVID-19. Yes, they asked whether it was a wholly exogenous event with respect to the international economic system, or whether within itself it has some underlying fragilities that we are underestimating. And then they ask which are the main differences, the major differences vis-à-vis the global financial crisis, whose outbreak was between 2008 and 2009. So I would ask our distinguished guests to address this issue raised by the Giovani Globali Association, whom again I thank for being with us today and joining our discussion. The floor is our guests.
Okay. Shall I speak?
Of course, you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. If I understand correct, I don't know whether, I'm not sure whether I can comprehend fully the question. I think COVID-19, of course, disturbs the globalization series and the world economy alike. To a certain extent, it causes the Great Recession, the most severe recession since the Great Depression in the 1930s. And the second is due to the fact that in order to guard against the possible future public calamities, so countries have to resort to their own supplies for the basic needs, for the medical service or for the important infrastructure goods for their own countries. So that means the contraction of globalization back to the border behind, to their own economy behind their border. So that might be some changes. But on the whole, if the virus is passed or under effective control, there may be a new trend that the governments and the companies may think it again. It might be better to have it globalized, to save costs, to raise efficiency. So that might happen. We have to watch and see. And as far as world economy is concerned, the world economy this time is suffering a very, very serious recession, which is different from global financial crisis and the recession in 2008 and 2009. They are similar, serious recession, but they are different. The global financial crisis caused the recession is by its own economic structural problems, because of the over-expansion of financial derivatives, which has created a serious debt issue, and it caused the pulled the whole economy down to recession. So, but this time, the recession is caused directly by the natural disaster, by COVID-19, by the virus, not by the structural problems of the economy itself. So we can see the phenomena. So it hit the bottom very quickly, then started to pick up. Although the pickup might be slow, might be long, it's different from the global financial crisis 12 years ago. And according to the latest estimate of IMF, the global economy as a whole will not recover to the pre-COVID-19 level, 2019, by late 2021, or maybe by the year as a whole, it could be back to the pre-virus level in the year 2022. So that means it will cost the world 3 years to recover. It will be serious. And we should not say that, oh, the economy is picking up. We should be very optimistic. We should bear in mind that the difficulty will continue, and we have to be working hard to fight it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. He. I don't know whether Mr. Dini, because I think that Mr. Wang has a problem with the connection, so hopefully he will be back soon. So I give floor to Luca Bellardini for coordinating this Q&A time, asking the question to Mr. He and Mr. Dini so far, and if Mr. Wang will be back, of course, we will have the pleasure to listen to his answers too.
So any question, you're welcome.
Well, thank you. I was with no audio. Thank you, Professor He, for your answer. I'm going to go on with the questions submitted to us by the Giovani Globali Association, whom I again thank for joining us. The following question is about the different attitudes to addressing the first health and then economic recession yielded by the COVID-19. Our guests ask whether there are, regardless of the structural differences between Italy and China, they ask whether there are actually similar solutions which have been adopted, similar measures between Italy and China, taken in place to address the recession caused by the pandemic. And then, as a very strictly connected question, how should the post-COVID-19 global economic reprise, as we all hope, how it should be structured, on what principles it should be based, and especially since they are an association made by young people, which role might be played in the future to overcome the recession by young people, by the youth, both in Italy, in China, and elsewhere in the world. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. This is a very good question. I think the COVID-19, the pandemic, is a common enemy of all the countries. So different governments have adopted different approach, different methods. I don't think that China's method is correct or others are not correct. This is not the correct or incorrect. It's a difference of methods, and all methods should be allowed to try. And each country should have their own methods adapting to the needs, to the specific country situation of its own country or its own people. So I think Italy has been doing a good job as well. And in China, I think that we put the control of the pandemic first before supporting the economy. Because we say that if the people's health are in a threat and the virus is still spreading, we cannot do a good job for economic upturn. So first of all, we should effective control of the virus. Then we see the pickup economy. And in China, I think it's effective because we controlled the virus in April, at least latest May. Then it kind of started pick up in the second quarter, and it's now in the firm track of recovery. And we cannot say that other countries should try to do the same, because other countries should do it according to their own needs. And economic recession, we should not just stay at the macroeconomic data, say that the data is improving, so that's good. We should pay attention to more structural issues left over by the virus. For instance, some people have lost their jobs permanently, and many of the small businesses closed down, and how to support them in the future, and how shall we find new engines for the economy for the year to come. So these are more tropical issues. And also, because globalization has been hit by the pandemic, how should we just make up for the future to keep globalization on track? Thank you.
Thank you, Professor He. I cannot see either President Dini or Professor Wang online, so probably we are going on with another question. Still our audience from the Giovani Globali Association is asking us which are the actual measures which may be taken by either the European Union, the USA, or China in order to counteract the growing protectionist trends which are in a sense stemming from the global recession. And they ask whether these trends, whether this aversion to global free trade might be detrimental to the ideals of an open and integrated world.
Oh, the good question. I think the protectionism is mostly happened before the pandemic. It's more serious in 2019. According to the data supplied by IMF, over $600 billion trades has been under trade restrictive measures, which cost the global GDP growth by 0.9 percentage points. And this year, since the outbreak of global pandemic, we haven't seen a major advancement of protectionism, unlike what happened during the Great Depression in the 1930s, when the United States just raised tariffs considerably across the board, only to be retaliated by UK, France, and Canada, which prolonged the global recession, depression. But this year we haven't seen that. So the important, it's different, but not in that form of protectionism, raising tariffs, although they have been individual cases. The most part is some contraction of production supply chains behind the border. That might be in some senses, it's reasonable because it's to safeguard the security of their own people. But in other cases, there might be some protectionism harming the global trade in the future, and especially the United States. It's nothing to do with the pandemic, just the fence of technology to China. It's protectionism and also harming the world trade. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I should proceed with another question for you, Professor He. Probably I'm going to merge other two questions, namely, one is from Dr. Gabriela Marceglia, who is the CEO of Sirius Global, a firm involved in professional-oriented education in the academic field. So, Dr. Marceglia asks whether given that trust is of the utmost importance in international cooperation, where should Italian organizations in general, but SMEs in particular, look for reliable Chinese partners in order to start working with Chinese counterparts? And I also take upon the opportunity to submit to you another question from the Giovani Globali Association, who is asking for specifically youth-oriented opportunities. So maybe by merging the SME topic with the youth topic, the question becomes some on maybe on startups or innovative businesses established and conducted by young people. So the floor is yours.
That's a great question, because I think the SME plays an important role in each economy, and in Italy is especially the case, and China has also the similar case. I think SMEs generally do not have enough resources, international resources. It's difficult to develop new markets or to keep trade with other countries. So in that case, I think SMEs associations or organizations in Italy should play this part to support SMEs, individual SMEs. And in regarding searching chances or increasing trade and cooperation with China, I highly recommend that you approach Chinese embassy in Italy and the consulates general. And we all have commercial and economic sections in the embassy and the consulates. One of their duties is to support the local business in cooperating with China. And the second is you could approach China's CCPIT, China Council for Promotion of International Trade, and also different China Chamber of Commerce. That's for separated industries. They will be willing to help you. And you can also contact your China European Union Chamber of Commerce in Beijing, and they will also be happy to help you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Professor He. Of course, the Italian concept of small and medium-sized enterprise is very different from the Chinese one in size and dimensional terms, of course, by obvious reasons. But your answer perfectly addressed the issue. I hope it was explanatory and very useful to both parties who asked questions, either Gabriela Marzeglia, who is a young entrepreneur and manager in an innovative field, in an educational field, but also to the people from the Giovani Globali Association. Probably yes, we are basically done with our questions. If there are no other speeches by the audience, I'm going to basically leave room to the final remarks before concluding this debate, this very well established and very highly level developed discussion. So, are there any further comments or questions addressed to Professor He? Unfortunately, we haven't been able to have again President Dini and Professor Wang online to answer the question. So probably Professor Carli, the floor is yours for the final remarks to conclude this wonderful discussion. I personally thank our guests, Professor He and of course President Dini and Professor Wang, for their very useful insights on the Sino-Italian relations, both in economic and social and cultural terms, which is the very underlying reason why economic and financial relations may thrive. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Bellardini, for your final questions that you asked to our guests. I would like to thank everybody for attending this very important webinar. So I would like to thank our audience, and I would like to give my really my appreciation to our Chinese guests for joining us and for giving us a view from a country which is playing a crucial role in the international order, economics-wise and political-wise. So thank you very much for joining us today. Also, I would like to thank President Lamberto Dini for his excellent speech and the excellent questions that have made our debate so interesting. I really hope, Mr. He and Mr. Wang, that we will have other opportunities in the future for going into deeper details and for continuing our discussion, because I think that international cooperation and the try of making a better international environment is one of the goals that through debate, through conversation, Associazione Guido Carli is pursuing. So thank you very much for your time and hope to have other opportunities in the future.
Thank you. 这么久，1个小时，结果大概搞了快2小时，已经完了吧？退出。
拜拜。